Coastal towns including Falmouth, Porthleven and Penzance all had their cards marked when it came to the proposed German invasion, and all can be found in the plans to invade, the plans known as Operation Sealong. Long before the thundering sound of the Luftwaffe could be heard over the blue skies of Cornwall, the Third Reich were already at work gathering information on the British Isles. Postcards, holiday snaps, and even our very own Ordnance Survey maps have been used to understand the lie of the land and the natural challenges an invading force would encounter. So it is no wonder our local defence volunteers, the Navy, the Army and the RAF reinforce those natural challenges with challenges of war, concrete defences, minefields, flamethrowers on our beaches, and booms spanning our rivers and harbour entrances. Over 15 communal air raid shelters were designed by the end of 1941, and approximately 10 of them were built as a result in Newlyn. They ranged from new builds on open space to cellar designs where reinforcement was added to the building's existing infrastructure. Mr. Cowell drew it, and Mr. Wheatley of FF Ariba, an architects and surveyors company from Truro, drew up the initial plans, and the contract to build was given to a number of local construction companies. Many of the shelters have now been demolished, whilst houses that were reinforced to allow the use of their cellars as shelters are still standing, but no longer accessible to the public. Between the 26th of May and the 4th of June 1940, more than 338,000 Allied soldiers were evacuated from Dunkirk. And Churchill stated, "We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be." On the 28th of May 1940, 2 days into the evacuation, the plans to defend our island were put into action in Cornwall, and a call for local defence volunteers was published in the local Cornishman newspaper for Penzance, Cornwall and Newlyn. Every man that was not already enlisted, was of fit state, and was between the ages of 17 and 65, was to muster with their identity cards at the Oddfellows Hall, what we now believe to be the Egyptian House on Chapel Street. The volunteers at Cornwall were to meet at the Church Hall, and Newlyn, Mousel and Poole volunteers would register with their enrolment forms at the Newlyn British Legion. By the July of the same year, over 1.5 million men had signed up throughout the UK, and on the 23rd of August, Winston Churchill renamed these men the Home Guard. It didn't take long for the keen volunteers to reinforce their hometowns with anti-tank traps, pillboxes and other deadly ways of stopping the German invasion. Even the slipways had vertical steel and concrete posts embedded in the granite floors.
We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be.
Just like the Helford and many other ports throughout the southwest, Newlyn Harbour was installed with a boom net, designed to stop ordnance such as torpedoes breaching the harbour entrance and causing considerable damage to Navy and civilian boats within. The Civil Engineer in Chief of Devonport designed and installed 2 steel frames made up of I-beams, which were bolted down to the south and north quays, each with a pulley system connecting both sides of a 20-foot high net spanning the harbour entrance. The winch on the north quay raised and lowered the net along with 6 5 to 7 ton counterweights, taking up the slack and maintaining tension. It wasn't just the 42nd Air Sea Rescue based at Newlyn during the war that needed to be protected. No more than 20 motorised fishing vessels from Newlyn were commandeered for war service by the Royal Navy. And providing the captains and crew were fit enough, they were expected to follow their ships into the Royal Navy Reserve. These vessels were used as auxiliary boats and harbour patrol craft. Some even became barrage balloon vessels which would operate amongst other naval and RAF boats, trying to prevent low-flying enemy aircraft from finding a good target. Amongst the bustling activity of the harbour was also the French and Belgian fishing vessels. These had escaped during the days around the Dunkirk evacuations. Some of these though went on to return to the French coast on regular trips, operating under the Special Operations Executive based in Helford, the Isles of Scilly and Dartmouth. One of the volunteers from the Newlyn Home Guard though was not lucky enough to make it to the victory of 45. On the 27th of May 1941, at 11 o'clock at night, almost 1 year after the enrolment of the Home Guard, a German Heinkel of Göring's Luftwaffe dropped 6 high-explosive bombs on Newlyn Harbour. One Belgian fishing boat was sunk and another damaged. The plane then circled the town and returned to drop one more high-explosive bomb along with machine gunning the boats at rest. There was 2 casualties during this particular attack, 1 naval rating and 1 Belgian fisherman. This wasn't the end though for the evening. Less than 35 minutes later, another Luftwaffe plane flew very low over the harbour and dropped another very high explosive bomb amongst the boats. Substantial damage was done to the shops and dwellings on the cliff, and the electricity services to the village were cut temporarily. This time though, there was 2 casualties in this incident and both were Home Guard. One of them, Mr. Basil Schiffers, sadly died after being hit by a cannon shell fired from the Heinkel 111. The plane received heavy gunfire from the 12 Lewis machine guns on loan from the Royal Navy, and the plane was believed to have been hit. People from frontline countries such as Belgium, Denmark and Poland, who saw the atrocities of war firsthand, and whom experienced the infamous blitzkrieg, still to this day do not know or even believe that Britain saw action on its own soil. Most believe the country, the southwest, here in the furthest most southerly point of the country, was a place that city folk sent their children to be safe from the bombs and horrors of the Blitz. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. Throughout my research on Cornwall at war, I have discovered that over several hundred high explosive bombs were dropped in Cornwall alone over the 5 years leading up to the end of the war. Alverton Road, 26th of September 1942. Alverne, Polwithen Estate, 8th of April 1941. Nansalven, Green Market, Market Jew Street, Chyandower Cliffs, Roseveen, 4th of April 1941. And the hardest hit of them all, Alma Terrace and St James's Street. On Sunday the 8th of June 1941, at 10 to 9 in the evening, the Luftwaffe dropped 10 high explosive bombs, along with a large number of incendiaries on houses in Alma Terrace and St James's Street. 8 houses were completely destroyed, and a number of people were trapped in the burning buildings. One 250 kilogram unexploded bomb lay on the pavement up against 1 Bellevue Terrace. It sat there precariously until bomb disposal turned up to remove the fuse. At 11:20, another 2.5 hours later, a further bomb exploded in St James's Street, causing casualties to ARP personnel. 9 people were killed and 7 seriously injured during this raid, with 1 fireman and 1 police sergeant being severely injured. Today we can clearly see the anomalies on the streets, but passers-by would never have questioned why the break in the terrace opens up to such modernised, non-traditional buildings. On the 26th of September 1944, once the threat of a German invasion was distant memory, all removable defences such as the boom, the scaffolding on the beaches, and more importantly the hundreds of landmines laid at Eastern Green Beach. They were all taken away and disposed of by bomb disposal. Like many beach clearances, even on the Atlantic Wall, there was always casualties. And on this particular occasion, 2 members of bomb disposal were killed trying to make the area safe again. So the Germans did cause havoc in the southwest, but Operation Sea Lion was never attempted thanks to the Battle of the Skies being won by the RAF. But it doesn't mean the Axis powers didn't make it to our shores. Penzance Cemetery is the final resting place of 4 of the Third Reich's serving soldiers. Both Schweizer and the unknown German were members of U-Boat 1209. U-Boat 1209 hit Wolf Rock near the Isles of Scilly on the 18th of December 1944. And along with the 2 buried here, 7 other crew members died, including the captain. Elsvager is recorded as being a crew member of U-1169, which was sunk by depth charges from HMS Duckworth off the Lizard Peninsula. Hale's body was recovered from the sea by a Newlyn trawler. The Western Morning News newspaper reported on Friday the 14th of February that his body was hauled up off Land's End. A report in the Cornishman newspaper of the 20th of February detailed his burial at Penzance Cemetery being carried out in full military honours. Civilians were machine gunned in the very streets they lived, in places like St Ives, Falmouth and Newlyn. German U-boats were sent ashore to collect fresh water from our streams at places like Nanquidna, and even the Special Operations Executive operated casually amongst the people, the businesses and the rivers on our south coast. Regardless of popular belief at the time, Cornwall was on the front line from the very start.